All right. Last album of the night. The greatest album of all time.
Yes.
We finally did it, guys. It's been a while. So this is OK Computer by Radiohead. In the opening montage, you heard Paranoid Android. And now you're going to hear a little bit of Letdown. So, OK Computer. It's number one across the board in the 90s and 97 and over all time. Their highest rated album of all time. Made Rolling Stone's list. Man, they crushed it. 42, only number 42 on Rolling Stone's list. But and Radiohead is ranked number 2 of overall artist rankings. And in my overall Matt rankings, they're number 2 as well. So there you go. We previously covered Pablo Honey. That was all in season 4. That was episode 26. The Bends, guys, episode 45. Just like Corner Shop, it's all full circle here. So and this album was released on May 21st, 1997. So in 2 weeks, it's going to turn 28.
Wow.
Yeah, that's where we are right now. So we did talk about the Bends midway through that tour. The kind of the beginnings of this record starts when Brian Eno commissioned the group to contribute a song to a charity album that he was bringing together called the Help album. That was to raise funds for war-stricken areas such as Bosnia and Herzegovina. Actually, lots of other CTS artists on that album, including Oasis, The Stone Roses, Portishead, Massive Attack, Suede, Sinead O'Connor, Manic Street Preachers, Nena Cherry, and Blur.
Cool.
I would like to listen to that.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Me too. I'd also like to see that group of people do Oblique Strategies with Brian Eno. Would be the other thing I'd like to see.
I don't know if, I don't think so. I don't think he produced it. I think he just kind of brought it together because there's no way this could be like. I think Radiohead took 5 hours to record the song that they did, which was "Lucky," which is on this album. But the entire album apparently was recorded in one day on September 4th, 1995, and then they released it 5 days later. So it was kind of a rush delivery kind of thing, just trying to get as much money as they could raised for the charity. So. But as I mentioned, Radiohead, they recorded Lucky. They brought in Nigel Godrich, who was mainly, I think he co-produced one song on the Bends, but he was mainly an engineer on that record. And that's really started, working with him directly like that, really started their relationship, where what it would become, because I think every Radiohead album since has been produced by Nigel Godrich. So, and so the recording of the song "Lucky" was kind of, York described it as it was like, shaping the nascent sound and mood of their upcoming record. It was an indicative of what we wanted to do. It was like the first mark on the wall. So that kind of, when they started recording that, they kind of got more ideas about what they wanted their new record to be. They definitely wanted it not to be like the Bends, kind of wanted to move away from that sound. But on the positive side about the Bends, it did, that the success of that record, the way that it came out, it did give them confidence to self-produce this album, which they co-produced really with Nigel Godrich. And their label Parlophone gave them £100,000 for recording equipment. And many people have said OK Computer is a concept record, but the band has, disavowed them of that notion. Johnny Greenwood said that the only concept that we had for this album was that we wanted to record it away from the city and that we wanted to record it ourselves. So they wanted to do something different than the Bends. They initially actually didn't have Godrich produce it. They just kind of started asking him questions and asked him to kind of be more of a consultant, but eventually just, resulted in him being a co-producer. So the problem with producing the record themselves was that they ran into difficulties because they would just start fleshing out ideas and they would start recording them. They would jump from idea to idea. When they ran out of ideas, they would move on to another song, and they kind of just didn't really, complete things. So Godrich's roles really became increasingly important because he was more impartial, and they needed more of an outside voice to kind of really direct what they were doing. They recorded about 4 songs before they went on. They took a break to go open up for Alanis Morissette, which they described as a little bit awkward because the crowd, he wasn't really there to see Radiohead, and they're saying about it kind of like these bored teenage girls like throughout the audience when they were playing, and wasn't really well, the Venn diagram wasn't quite there between the Alanis Morissette fans and the Radiohead fans. So another important event in this time period was when director Baz Luhrmann commissioned the band to record a song for the Romeo and Juliet soundtrack. And he gave them the final 30-minute cut of the film. And from that, they immediately went in to record exit music for a film, which is the song that was played over that film's closing credits. It was actually left off the soundtrack at the band's request, because they just wanted it to be on their record. But that song really helped them shape the rest of this record. Tom York said it was the first performance that we'd ever recorded where every note of it made my head spin, something I was proud of, something I could turn up really, really loud and not wince at any moment. So York had high praise of that song and really kind of helped motivate them to keep going and, continue with their sound. They changed the studio. They went to a mansion in Bath that was owned by actress Jane Seymour, who wasn't there because she was out recording Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman, not recording, but filming, I should say. And they really liked that because it kind of allowed them like total free reign. They could record at any time of the day. That allowed them to be more, improvisational, more spur of the moment. So that isolation really helped them work at a pace that helped with the spontaneity and helped to develop the songs.
I could have told them that.
Yeah.
That's what Led Zeppelin did. That's what all these bands have done.
Yeah, right. Rolling Stones, right, for Exile, right? Yep. Yeah. Guitarist Ed O'Brien estimated that 80% of the record was recorded live, and many of Tom York's vocals were first takes. And York said there was a lot of influence, a lot of stuff that he was trying to channel during this. One of the starting points being Miles Davis's Bitches Brew, and which he called incredibly dense and terrifying. So that was an influence, as well as songs like I'll Wear It Proudly by Elvis Costello, Fall on Me by REM, Dress by PJ Harvey, A Day in the Life by the Beatles. All of those songs in one way or another were important influences for Tom York. As well as Can. Forgot about that. Can, yeah, which nice. I can kind of see that.
Another band that recorded in a church, I think, or something. Or
they did. Or was it Castle or something?
Yeah.
Like
Castle.
Romanian Castle, I think.
It was weird. It was like part drugs and part like art inspiration, right? If I remember, like that, yeah.
Yeah, another great band that I'm glad we covered. So some critics have stated that this is kind of like that 1970s prog music was influential, but the band has very much disagreed with that notion. They were reported to be, quote, aggressively hostile to the genre of 70s prog music.
That is the Venn diagram of me and Radiohead.
And so the lyrics on this record, as opposed to the Bends, became more abstract than personal. They kind of depict a dystopian world with rampant consumerism, capitalism, social alienation, and political malaise, with other themes. Yeah, well, yes. Other themes such as transport, technology, insanity, death, modern British life, globalization, and anti-capitalism. The writings of Noam Chomsky were quite influential as well. And as I said, people call this a concept album, but they said no, that's not the case. However, they did have the choices of the track listings were very important for them. They wanted the album to flow in a certain way, and they felt that this was the best way to do it. Anybody know where the title of OK Computer comes from?
I don't. No.
No Hitchhiker Guide to the Galaxy fans here. It's from the.
Yeah. I've never read that book, even though it gets referenced all the time.
You would hate it.
Okay. I can't say I have an opinion. I just hear it like a lot of people say it's their favorite book. A lot of them are not people I'm friends with, but like a lot of people do say it.
Well, apparently the title came from a character's line, the character being Zaphod Beeblebrox. He speaks the phrase, "Okay, computer, I want full manual control now." And I guess the members of the band of Radiohead listened to that radio series. I guess it was not just a book, but it was also a radio series. So they listened to that
comedy science fiction radio series on the BBC. That's oxymoronic.
Yeah. So they listened to that. Apparently on the bus in their 1996 tour, they were listening to that instead of music or other, I guess. Yeah, that was their podcast, I guess.
Yeah. Audiobook.
So the American label Capitol was not terribly excited about this finished product. International distributors drastically reduced their sales estimate as well. Capitol reduced their estimates from 2 million to 500,000. And when actuality, the sales of this record, this is weird. It's estimated between 6.9 and 7.8 million worldwide. But anyway you slice it, way more than 2 million, and certainly way more than 500,000. So, was nominated for Grammy Awards for Album of the Year and Best Alternative Music Album at the 40th Annual Grammy Awards in 1998. They actually did win that award for a Best Alternative Music Album. They planned to produce a video for every song on the record, but the project was abandoned due to financial and time constraints. So they didn't do that, but they did have various videos for No Surprises, Paranoid Android, Karma Police. All of those went over budget. That was part of the reason why. And if you guys have ever seen pretty much every video that Radiohead did around this time was really interesting and cool and unique and whatnot. So, that Radiohead's website was created to promote the album, which went live at the time of its release, making this band one of the first to actually manage an online presence overall. So, the internet, not a huge thing in 1997. So they were known for that. They went on a world tour in support of the record, but there was about a year from May 22nd, 1997 to April 18th, 1998. There was also a documentary made at that time called Meeting People is Easy. That premiered in 1998. Have either of you guys seen that documentary?
I haven't.
I have not.
It's very unsettling. It's a very, just talk about dystopian, and really what comes out of that is you can just see how miserable, absolutely miserable the band was. Tom York actually said that the tour was a year too long. He said that he was the first person to realize that, and then right away, and then 6 months later, everybody else was saying it. They weren't talking to each other. It was the lowest point of their career. So they said there's nothing worse than having to play in front of 20,000 people when someone absolutely does not want to be there, and you can see like how just horrible they feel. So there's that going on. In 2014, the United States National Recording Preservation Board selected this to go into the National Recording Registry of the Library of Congress, another one of those records. So I can go through, I'm not going to go through every song here, but there's extensive writings on what each song is about. Yeah, man, this is the big album for Radiohead. Certainly at this time, other people like other albums of theirs better. But let's start. I think Josh, you got to go first, for once here. So, what's your take on OK Computer?
Yeah. Well, it's a great album. There's no no ifs, ands, or buts about that. I really, I guess I've said this. I really like Radiohead, but it's never a band that like I knew about at the time or think about like as a go-to listen. So whenever I do listen to them, I'm always like pleasantly surprised or like rediscovering something. It's like I've hearing it so long in between listens, like I always like hear something new, or I find like a reappreciation for the band, and this album is no different. The thing about Radiohead is that I feel like sometimes, and this probably happens later, the more albums they make, but I think they get a reputation for like being weird and like hard to, more avant-garde than maybe they are, at least at this time. And I find this album so like listenable and like intriguing, and like draws you in, and like I find the music is really interesting, and Tom York's voice works completely in sync with, he has such kind of like a different like kind of ethereal, it's not the right word, but like computer like it's strained at times. He has like a wailing type of voice too when he's going for the choruses and stuff, and it works completely in sync with this. I find that there is something to that comment about there being like a prog nature to it that struck a chord, because I do feel like songs, I'm not saying this is proggy at all, but there is some sort of like, with the construction of the songs, there is some sort of like movements that take place at times, and so it's kind of got this interesting like flowy structure to songs where they build out. I also like that they aren't afraid to like rock out at times too, and like they go full instrumental guitar, which is like really great. Like they build up to it and like totally works for the songs. I forgot how many like really big like familiar singles are on this album too. So that probably seems obvious when you look at the listing, but when you just hit play and like don't like listen to it the first time, like you recognize all these songs that have been used so many times throughout now in like movies and TV, or like snippets and different things, or you just heard the song. I feel like what I'm trying to say is like they are probably more popular than I realize, or that they were in my like life, and so like I'm coming to them like we said with the previous albums too, like coming to them relatively fresh, even though well, ultimately my introduction to them was from you, Matt. So like that's when it started, like my Radiohead like experience, and so yeah, this is the next iteration of them. I feel like this is like the best yet. They, in a way, and I don't know if this will hold true, but like every album of theirs so far is good. I feel like the same way I kind of do with like REM. Like I've liked all of their albums up to this point, and they're all slightly different, but they're all like definitely like Radiohead. So I like the weirdness of this album as well, like the computer voice thing that was going on where it's like repeating the dialogue. That's so interesting. I think there's computer dialogue like layered in Paranoid Android. I feel like that works really well, and I think ultimately I like really respond to like kind of the sci-fi nature of it. I never thought of this album as a concept album, but I think there is kind of like thematic through lines running through the album, like you said when you talked about what they were trying to accomplish. And yeah, it's a thumbs up for me. It's no surprise that this album is rated so high. I'll be interested to see where it comes down in my final album rankings of the 90s, if I can even figure that out. But yeah,
seriously,
I'll be interested. What do you think, John? I'd be interested to hear what your take is this time around.
Oh, I mean, this is a deservedly well lauded album. This is an excellent album. I would disagree. I think The Benz is a great album. I didn't think Pablo Honey was all that great an album, I'll be honest, and I think I share that opinion with the band, who also feels that way a little bit. Like, as when you make the REM comparison, I would argue that there was like a consistency, right, in all of the albums that here. But with that being said, I mean, The Benz and OK Computer are, you know, amazing albums. And I think what's really, unlike you, Josh, like I always process this from the moment I heard it as a concept album. And I would say it's actually one of the best examples of like what a good concept album is like, because it's not hitting you over the head. There's a subtlety to what they're doing here that sometimes gets lost when musicians make big statements, or when science fiction tries to talk about the world, right? It's that like thing where science fiction's so like it's making a grand gesture, but they're also thinking that it's like this hidden thing, but it's like very overt that can be eye roll, like a naivete, right? About like, you know, kind of like, have you ever thought about like this? It's like, of course I have, you know, but there's none of that here. They do a really good job of weaving it. I've always looked at the, for me, how I process this album is like the emptiness of modern life to some degree, and that balancing of, you know, what we now live in, right? Like an automatized world, and like, how do you make connections within that world? There's a lot of songs about, like loosely mental illness, but just feeling detached from the world, I'd say. No Surprises it's a really remarkably great, it's like a suicide song kind of, and its placement sort of lends itself to that. It's not overtly a suicide song, but it serves the same idea. I mean, there's the part that always really unnerves me in that song, but in the good way, is that part where it transitions to, I'll take a quiet life, a handshake of carbon monoxide. True story too. My mom one day said to me, she only this was probably like 2004ish or five. She's like, I really need to become more familiar with Radiohead. I only like know Creep, right? But you guys, they're really well regarded. I said, okay. And my mom's pretty open minded, right? So I just pulled up something that had songs, and the first song that came was No Surprise. She's like, "Ooh, that's stark." And then the second thing that played was Knives Out, which is and with the video, which is a great video, but like unnerving. And my mom said, her take ever since then on Radiohead has been like, that's the closest like a nervous breakdown sounds like on recorded, like it sounds like. Whereas I said like Dirt by Alice in Chains sounds like addiction, right? Like I think my mom would say the same thing about like a nervous breakdown in Radiohead. That's even when there's other songs she's come about, that's still like her starting point, which always makes me laugh a little bit. But whether it be Karma Police, which is an existential song, right? Or whether it be No Surprises, the singles, Paranoid Androids, probably where they get the prog, right? Like the idea of prog, but I don't, in all honesty. Like I get it because there's length and there's chord changes, but they're doing something different with that than I think what prog is trying to show you how good of players they are sometimes. I don't think that was what I think Paranoid Android was designed to be, thematic, subject wise, with the length, as opposed to that. Then it's funny, I always forget like Let Down. It's sort of like Let Down. You just imagine like Tom York like handing that song to like Chris Martin and being like, here's your career, sir. Like just continue to like do this like in the career and you'll have your first two albums, right? Because you could easily just take Let Down and it could be on Parachutes or Rush of Blood, to the Head or Travis or any of those groups, right? That take that template. And you forget sometimes that like Radiohead could just write like, a song like that, right? Like a straight ahead pop song that is pretty. Right. Electioneering's another song I've always loved off this album. And Lucky, Deep as well. It's good. There's no bad songs on this album.
Yeah.
And it really works as a concept album for me. They take risks on this album because this album has been so influential and so many people have taken so much from it. I think it's one of those albums that might even not, as crazy as it sounds, get its due as being as influential as it is. It really is sort of like a tunnel between what like art rock and experimental rock was doing in the 30 years. I think that's why it's so well regarded, right? It was able to take like much really challenging music. It was able to synthesize it in a way that is palatable, right? But still artistically ambitious enough that you recognize that you're listening to something that isn't like mainstream palette type stuff too. So it's almost like the most commercial that you can make art rock, which is to say not super commercial, but like,
Yeah.
Get what I'm saying? I think that's the secret. It's kind of like how Metallica figured out how to make like metal, like something that you could listen to if you were like a 50-year-old who listened to no other metal albums, right? Like that's like Radiohead kind of figured that out with art rock, right? And then 20 years afterwards, people just kept taking tropes of this and taking individual songs and reinventing their image with it. So that was the other thing I came about with this. It's like listening to this album at this point, you can clearly see where the influences come from, but you can also clearly see who is listening to this album and synthesizing it in their own music. So, I mean, yeah, this is a fantastic album. Sometimes albums get tons of hosannas to the point that it's almost setting you up to like say it's overrated. I luckily, and I'm not patting myself on the back, I think I've shown it on this show, I don't fall into that trap. Like I always process everything, as I see it, right? But you'd have to kind of be really looking to be an edgelord to not give this album its due. It's hard to think that anybody who likes music would not say this was an excellent album. That's kind of why it's universally, considered to be one of the better albums, of the last 40 years. Across all genres. So, yep, that's where I stand on this one.
Yeah, this is the record that really hooked me into the Radiohead world. I certainly had I had Pablo Honey, like I had a lot of other alt rock, alternative rock albums. I got the Bends, but I remember not really listening to that one as much. And then actually I didn't get this one right away. It was actually my brother who wasn't really listening to Radiohead prior that I recall, and he was like, "Have you heard the Radiohead album?" I'm like, "No, I didn't." I was like, "Yeah, they're fine. They're like, He's like, "No, you got to really listen to it." And so I started listening to it through him, and I was like, because I knew Paranoid Android. I think that was the video, that cartoon video that they had. I remember seeing that and just being like, "Oh, that's different. Okay, and then I kind of started, hearing it with my brother, and I was just like, okay, yeah. And then I started hanging out with other people that really got into them, and it just took off from there. So this is the album that, like, I think that, and we talked about this earlier, right? Like how fans can be like, I like the band when they did the one thing and then they did the other thing, and then I hate that, or whatever. It's just totally, they're no good anymore or whatever. And this is kind of like, this is the album that, as you guys, to your points about, how it kind of was more universal. This is the album that I think pretty much everybody can universally come to say that this is like the Radiohead album that can kind of, it bridges the gaps between the, the pop, the melody, and the art rock.
Yep.
It's not too far in any direction. It's like the perfect meld of those two things. And, and that's what I've said multiple times on this podcast. That's some of my favorite music, is the stuff that's kind of like, it's off the beaten path, but it's still couched in like this melody or this beat or rhythm or whatever that really just brings you back. And there's not really an album that does it better than this one for my money. And so I've heard this record so many times. I've only listened to it like twice this week, and I would have wanted to listen to it more, but what stood out to me differently this time around is I really picked up on Colin Greenwood's bass. There's so many great bass parts in here. I mean, there's great everything. There's great music across the board. I think that's one of the things that you can really pick up, certainly on headphones. You get yourself a good set of headphones, and that there's so many layers in here, right? The guitars, there's like glockenspiels, and the drumming. Phil Selway's drumming is I've always been, I've always enjoyed that. I've always thought that brought a great element to it. Tom York's voice, the harmonies, right? The layering of the harmonies with his voice, and I think Ed O'Brien's the other main singer that does harmonies on here. But Colin Greenwood's bass really kind of just stood out to me this time around. Sometimes it's just the regular bass part, sometimes it's the fuzz bass part. The end of Exit Music, when the bass really kicks in there, it's just like it's like this orgasm of sound that's just like, holy crap, like what an ending to a song. And it really is highlighted by the bass there as well. And it's 53 minutes never flies by as fast as it does when I listen to this record. It's like, wow, it's over already. That's it. But it's just because there's not a missed moment on here. Even something like Fit or Happier, which isn't really a song. And oddly enough, that was something that Tom York advocated for that to be the opening track to this record. Guys were like, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think that's a little much there. But even something like that, it's perfectly placed in there, right? Like in the middle of this, with the piano playing in the background, and it's really thematically, it just fits in. It's like, yeah, we're all kind of becoming automatons, right? And we're like, just going through the motions of just these. I think that basically all the lines of that is just stuff that Tom York had picked up in ads or sayings that people say, and he just wrote down a bunch of them and just fed it through this Apple computer, that would just recreate like a robotic sound, repeating the words, and that really fits in the theme here, So it's kind of interestingly placed right in smack dab in the middle of the record. I mean, for me, the first 6 tracks on here, it's just banger, boom, 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 like really top-notch stuff. And it's something like, John, you mentioned Electioneering. I would probably say Electioneering and Climbing Up the Walls are my least favorite songs on this album, and they are amazing songs, right? That's not, I'm not taking away. It's just other songs on this record kind of like do more for me than those do. But listening to it this time around, it's just like, geez, what freaking songs, and the way that it ends, the beauty of No Surprises, kind of like the different directions that Lucky goes, and then just like the soaring vocals and like the ending of The Tourist is just like a perfect like guitar solo at the end, and how it just ends on that little drum beat and the like the triangle like ding. It's just like it's a perfect album, right? It's like, and so I am certainly biased here. It's my favorite Radiohead album. It's probably, make the argument it might be my favorite album of all time. And I'm certainly a fan of the band that appreciates what they do after this. I know there are people like my brother who's like, this is the album. Kid A, Amnesiac, and Rainbow, I lose it after that. Like, I just don't get it. They're getting too far up their own asses, and we can certainly talk about those records because we're going to cover all of them, I believe. So, but this one really stands the test of time. This one really, I think, could connect with lots of people that aren't Radiohead fans. I think that, I don't think I would say that this is the one that I would start with. I still feel like the Benz is like I would go with the Benz and then I would come here, because I think that you need to get started. Don't go right into the art rock piece right away, even though this is really palatable. Go to the low hanging fruit, and that would be the Benz, just because that's just an amazing rock record that doesn't really take nearly as many chances as this does. But it's just everything's coming together here. There's not a wrong note. There's not all the production. It's like it's just everything's perfectly placed, and I love it so much, and I'm glad that you guys like it too. You have to like it. How do you not freaking like this album? Come on. Yeah. So yeah, huge thumbs up. Couldn't say more about it.
I did laugh. I went to a site. I've been going to a site recently, and the site just has a thing that says those that listen to this also are most likely to listen to this, and I did laugh because number one for Radiohead of the overlap was Sonic Youth. Which
really?
Made me laugh, Matt, because I was like, it is crazy that I love both and definitely can see, you know what I mean, like the spirit of both of them in there, but you guys clearly do not, which you guys aren't wrong or right. It's always been an interesting, like there's others like today, like how we felt about the Verve Pipe at a much less, but like it is funny when it's like I stand on an island with the other two of you guys different, or like Josh and I sometimes, like Patti Smith, like with you, Matt, where it's like what in God's name, like how can you have this and us be here, and just like that's kind of how I feel. So, and there's others. We've been ones with Josh, like with Dream Pop, right, where we're just like, what is Josh not getting?
It's not that I don't get. I totally cognitively I get how you can mention Radiohead and Sonic Youth in the same breath. It's just
it's not a primary thing. It's like it's more like the krautrock type stuff.
Yeah,
but
and I like the krautrock. It's just there's just not enough there for me in Sonic Youth. But I think that there's just something about the melody. I mean, just the middle part, that part of Paranoid Android where they break it down and they do that vocal orchestral part. I think that was all Johnny Greenwood composed. That it's very John, because he's a big into composing. I mean, that like 2-minute whatever snippet there, that might be my favorite like piece of recorded music ever. I just think that's the way they do it. They're doing all the things that I really like to see, and you get more out of it the more you listen to it, because you're hearing different parts. I mean, there's stuff like that slathered all throughout here, and it's such an interesting record with that pop sensibility, with the great production. It's checking every single box you could check. It's being checked. I don't know, lyrically, John, like you're the lyrics guy. Like, does this stand up like as a lyrically excellent album, or Tom York's never really been known for like his lyrics, I would say probably either,
I wouldn't say it's like bad. It's thematic, right? And like I said, it's very clear that it's an existential dread album about society. That's pretty much what's being tread here. So I wouldn't say it's good or bad. I don't think the lyrics are necessarily the point with this as much, because I think the sonic landscape they're doing also serves as lyrics, if that makes sense. Like their music choices are
the moods.
Yes.
Matt, do you know what this OK Not OK 97 to 2017 version of the album is?
So that they did that like probably like, I don't know, several years ago, right? Was that 2017 when that came out? So it's this record, but then it's like a bunch of there's stuff on the cutting room floor. Radiohead has a lot of music that never made it on an album. That they were kind of, for a period of time, they were doing that very English thing that we saw in the '60s that the Beatles and the Stones and other artists were doing. There were singles, and then there were B-sides, and then there were albums and stuff like that. They did stuff for compilation albums. So, and then they did stuff that they never released either, right? And so they had a bunch of stuff. So that was kind of. In recent years, they put together, like, there was a Kid A Amnesiac, double album they put together with both those records, and then a bunch of cutting room floor stuff, basic. And when you buy their albums now, like, they haven't had an album in like 10 years, but when you, like, they had a period of time, you get the bonus CD of like the extra stuff that was done. I didn't get that. I mean, I'm typically not a fan of that. I think that's also one of the things I've realized in the podcast is, like, the original form of the album, with some exceptions, right? And I think we've talked about this before. Maybe when you tack on a bonus song, that's like a really good thing. But when you have like 6 or 7 or 15, like, here's a bonus CD of other stuff, it rarely, in my experience, has been something that's been like that. Maybe there's a gem of a song here or there, but as a whole, it's like, like, I just want to listen to the record,
right?
So it's just it's a bunch of extra stuff that was recorded at that time. But some of it's good, though, I would say.
Got it.